Today, I'm going to be talking about optimizing your author website for Google and social media. Now, sometimes when people talk about optimization, they're talking specifically about SEO or search engine optimization, and we will be talking about that, but we'll also be talking about optimization in a broader sense, making something the best it can be. So it's not just enough to put keywords in your website. We want to make your website accessible to an audience, and we want to help it find an audience. This is particularly important as an author to have this web presence and web platform. So that is what I'll be talking about today. Before we go further, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Kathryn Powley. You can find me on my website and in other locations online. I have about a dozen short stories published, many of which you can access on the internet at my website. This is me with my family. We live in the state of Michigan. My husband is actually an internet marketing professor at Western Michigan University. He taught me most of what I know about optimizing your website. In 2013, I became serious about having an author website. So in January, I redesigned my website and started planning out some posts. February, I posted several new blog posts and promoted to all my friends and told everyone, go look at my website. I had 127 unique visitors and 250 page views. Fast forward to February 2014, 773 visitors with over 1,000 page views. A year later, February 2015, 1,400 visitors, over 2,000 page views. And February 2016, 2,000 unique visitors with over 3,000 page views. So how did this happen? I actually only posted 1 or 2 blog posts per month over this 3-year period. But because I optimized them for both Google and social media, I was able to slowly increase my page views with putting in a minimal amount of work. And I think that for most authors, that's the goal. You don't want to have to be blogging 4 times a week or putting 10 hours a week into it. That's not feasible if you actually want to be working on your writing. And that's the approach that I've taken. Sometimes I've accidentally optimized things that I haven't wanted to. For example, I wrote a humorous blog post about my companion llama named Evelyn, kind of poking fun at the idea of having a companion llama, a pet llama friend. And I accidentally optimized it and was ending up in the top couple results on Google, and everyone would come to this post and leave immediately once they realized that I wasn't writing about a real companion llama. Luckily, I've slowly lost my great ranking on that search term. One post I did intentionally optimize is 10 keys to writing dialogue in fiction. I've optimized this and I receive often over 1,000 hits every single month of people reading this blog post again and again and again. So when you post a new blog post, when you have content, it sort of feels like you've got your 15 minutes of fame, as Andy Warhol said, where maybe you get a little bit of attention. However, quickly, often what happens is the blog archive, where your posts they disappear. It's a cemetery that is not even visited, maybe once a year. Instead, you want your blog archive to be like the Taj Mahal, where it's millions of visitors every year, where it's vibrant. It's a cemetery, it's an archive, but people visiting it again and again. So if you want this to be your author website, what do you need to do? First, you need to think about content. Your content needs to be stimulating. It needs to be searchable, shareable, and savable. So if it's not stimulating, if it's not good content, then you're out of luck. It doesn't matter what else you do. It needs to be searchable. People need to be able to find it. People need to be able to share it in easy ways. People need to be able to save it to access it later. So what is the purpose of author websites? This is what will help you figure out what is appropriate to have as your content. 1 is to sell your work. 2, to provide information, to drive people to action. It establishes your credibility and it can help you with building an audience and then retaining that audience, providing them with things that will keep them engaged. Ultimately, the most important things that you have on your website, you have to have your name, you have to have information about you, you need to have your book titles or short story or essays, whatever it is that you are promoting as an author. Those should have pages on your website, and then you should have at least a few prime posts about a few different topics to provide enough content on your website, and those need to be optimized, which we'll talk about. For an unpublished author, it feels a little tricky. So what is the market? You aren't published. Why are people going to come and read your website? So you can ask, what existing needs are not being met in a particular area? What can I provide? What do I care about? If you are writing nonfiction, in some ways this is easier. If you're writing about fishing, a nonfiction book about fishing, all of a sudden you should have your website have a lot of posts about fishing, and that can be content that you're providing. It's a little trickier if you're writing a novel about someone who is a fisherman. Most people aren't searching for novels about fishermen, or they're not coming at this the same way, so it becomes a little trickier. What should be on my website? As you figure out what you want for your content, you can also think about your audience. Who is this audience if you're an unpublished author? One, it's agents and editors. You are showing that you've put in the legwork, that you've created a website, that you already have a platform. Two, dedicated readers. This applies for both published and unpublished authors. These are people that are going to read your work no matter what you publish. These are your fans. This might include your family members and close friends. This might also include people that just love Regency romance, and that's what you write. Those are your dedicated readers that are going to keep reading. And then casual readers who might read something you write, who might read an occasional blog post, but they're not committed or continuous readers. It's just a short experience with you, your work, your website, your writing. Once again, though, what should I write about? These are a bunch of ideas. So you can actually post fiction online, whether it's short stories or poetry or comics. There's all sorts of people that do a comic a day or a comic a week. I've seen authors who do a mini short story every month, photo a day. You can talk about personal writing process, your inspiration, writers you admire. Some people do book review website, movie reviews, something related to craft that you've gone searching for and you haven't found a good answer, life updates, travels or events, your non-writing hobby, where you live, subjects your characters care about, top 10 lists of your top 10 favorite fill in the blank, your genre. So if it's steampunk, you could make a steampunk related website or posts on your website. Subjects your characters care about, resources for readers like genre compilation lists, how-to guides, soundtracks to your book or life, cooking or crafts, kids or family or church, rhetorical treatises on things you care about, satire, current events, dream casting your characters, favorite first lines, BuzzFeed-style quizzes. You could do themes based on seasons or months or holidays, grammar misused in the wild, inspiring quotes, your book trailer, all sorts of things that can become content for your website. Now, of course, it is better if it can be related to your writing, if it can be related to your brand, if you can fit this to your brand. My brand has kind of become writing, teaching as my two focuses. So I have some writing craft. I have a lot about my own writing, about teaching, and then I also just do miscellaneous things that pull in and kind of round out who I am. So you kind of have to figure out, what is my brand? And at first you might just start getting anything up there, getting readers, figuring out what people respond to, and that can help you establish your brand. When you're thinking about what to write about, for some topics, it is not an evergreen topic. So this might be something that has good times to write about, times that make sense to write about. So if you look at the life cycle of a rhetorical situation, you have something is at origin. So for example, if you're talking about Halloween stories or Halloween costumes or Halloween decorations or Halloween cakes, Well, when is the origin? When are people going to start thinking about that? At least several months before Halloween. If they're crafters, you might even be 4 or 5 months before, because it takes time to make all your Halloween crafts. Maturity might be late September or the core of October, when people are still have the ability to be creating things in advance for Halloween, if you're talking about crafts. Deterioration might be the few days before Halloween. Not as much time for people to create costumes or create decorations. Not as much time for people to even buy a Halloween short story, though they still might really be interested in it for that Halloween read. Disintegration, well, after Halloween, is probably a bad time to get people thinking about these Halloween costumes or to sell your Halloween short story, whatever it is. And this applies to politics, to current events, to all sorts of topics, that anything that relates to that people are going to be more interested in a moment in time, and you can time that on when you are going to post about a certain topic. Then you have, so these are kind of short-term topics that you might get a lot of people interested in something, and you can get a lot of readers for your content all at once. It also is good to have some evergreen topics. You might never have as big of an influx like you're going to with Halloween or something that's themed, but that people are just going to be generally interested in. So it's good to have posts that do both of these things, to have content that is short term, that gets people engaged, even if it's not going to have readers over the long term. It's also good to have evergreen content, something about a topic. Sometimes these are how-tos or just kind of informational things that people are going to keep coming back to, that will provide that steady readership. So now talking about, once you figure out your content, you need to optimize it. The first and most important thing to think about is optimizing it for Google. Well, after making stimulating content. The next important thing is optimizing it for Google. Google is the biggest of the search engines. They drive most of the search, and so it's most people that do search engine optimization focus primarily on Google, and as an author, that's probably your best bet. The big question is, how does Google determine what shows up on the first page when you search for a given term or subject matter? Now, Google is constantly changing their algorithms and modifying it to try to produce better results. But the basic things that these algorithms are using is they are looking for content and credibility. Content. What is this website or post relevant for a particular word or phrase? Second, credibility. How popular is your blog post compared to others? That's the only way that Google can tell if something's credible, is if there are links to it, if it seems like other people on the internet think that it's credible. So how are you going to show up to optimize for content and credibility? First, you have to write an awesome blog post. Otherwise, it's never going to work. Second, you need to find out what people are searching for. Often, if this is a post I really want to show up for Google, I'll put in a few minutes ahead of time doing a little bit of research, and I'm able to just tailor my post a little bit, and it makes it so a lot more people end up finding it than if I just wrote it without thinking about these things. So first, find out what people are searching for. There's some tools that you can use to do this. One that I like is keywordtool.io. So what you can do is you can search for something like writing dialogue, and I can find out these are all the terms people are searching for that start with the phrase writing dialogue. Now, it's not going to include things like how to write dialogue. You'd have to start typing how to write dialogue. But it's anything that starts with writing dialogue that people might be searching for. And you can say, oh, I could write about writing dialogue tips or writing dialogue and punctuation. Some people are searching for that. And that's actually sort of what I wanted to write about. So when you search for writing dialogue on Google, you can see that all the websites that are coming up are big websites. We've got Writer's Digest, we've got The Creative Pen, we've got Grammar Girl. We have these big websites that have a lot of credibility already on Google. It's going to be really hard to compete with a term like writing dialogue. So if that's the term I'm going for, I'm not going to show up on the first page. I'm not going to show up on the second page, the third page, probably the fourth page, unless you're a really big author already. So you take something like dialogue writing examples, though, and you search for that term and you can say, okay, Writer's Digest is showing up, but then there's also some just normal authors showing up. I might have a better chance of showing up for that search term. After you've done your research, you want to make sure that you include your keywords, the things that people are going to be searching for. You need that to be in your title of your post, in the URL, and in your post, ideally, because this is what's showing Google. My blog post is actually about this item, so much so that it is in my title, it's in my URL, and it's in my post. So here you can see that we've got 10 keys to writing dialogue in fiction is in my URL. So writing dialogue in fiction and here, writing dialogue in fiction and dialogue writing exercises is also in the title of my post, and it's also in my content. That's the only way that I'm going to show up for that. And here, I was really targeting dialogue writing exercises, and I have that multiple times in my post. It's signaling my readers, but it's also signaling Google. This is what my website, this page on my website is about. Next tip, to be perfectly optimized, words must be in the exact order as the search. And you don't have to be perfectly optimized all the time, but that's just something to consider. So with this post, the only thing I'm perfectly optimized for is writing dialogue in fiction, or keys for writing dialogue in fiction. I'm not perfectly optimized for writing dialogue exercises. I'm optimized for it, but it's not perfectly optimized for that term. The next tip is include related keywords in your post. So, for example, if what if they're searching for writing dialogue in stories? And I never include the word stories anywhere in my blog post. Well, Google's not going to have me show up for it, even though my post is clearly also about that, since it's about writing dialogue in fiction. So if you can think about, these are a few key other things that people might be searching for. And if you can put that synonym in there at least once or twice in your post, a few things key things people might be searching for, you're much more likely to show up for that additional term. The next tip is to use analytics. This is something that you should install on every website. Now, some platforms like Blogger come with some sort of analytics already built in. I use WordPress, and I've installed Google Analytics, which is a very robust analytics system, and it's free, and you should be able to install it on any platform. You'll just have to Google how to do that. And what analytics does is it allows you to see what is actually happening. So you write these posts and you have no idea how many people are actually going to this. Was this successful? Do people even care about this topic? Are people actually engaging with this? Did everyone on Facebook just click like, but none of them actually clicked through the link to go read the post? And that's what analytics is really useful for. Look, here's just a snapshot of Google Analytics installed on my website. So you can see how over time my traffic has slowly increased. This is a big picture view. You can set it to 1 week, 1 day, 1 month, anything. And you can see new visitors, return visitors, all sorts of information here. You can see how long they've spent, how many sessions they're going. This is a closer look at just 2016. You can see a peak on a day that I published a very popular blog post. But you can see that overall I'm still getting a decent number of, hundreds of hits every day. You can see that in this year how many hits I'm getting on posts. I can see what are my most popular posts each year. Well, my 10 keys to writing dialogue in fiction is kind of my evergreen post. And I can go see, my post where I cooked an egg on the asphalt in Phoenix and ate it. Well, that was a very good post last year. You can see where people are coming from. Some things like down there, a Fancy Nancy birthday party and activities. I was doing a birthday party for my daughter about Fancy Nancy. Kind of fits with my theme of being a writer, so I did a blog post about it, and I optimized for it, because if I'm going to do the blog post, might as well optimize for it. And it's not nearly as popular as some of my other posts, but I get a steady stream of visitors for that. with analytics, you can also see where people are coming from. So I can see that over this time period that I've selected, 10,000 are coming from organic search, so searching on Google or things like Bing, other Yahoo. You can see social. Okay, people are coming from Facebook or other social platforms. Direct links, referrals. And you can go drill down and get more information on that. And that'll be really useful for you to see what it is that is working, so you can emulate that, and what's not working, so you can figure out what to change next time. The next tip is group tricky posts for easier optimization. Now, let's say you like to write poems about frogs and spiders and other things. Well, there's not necessarily a good way to optimize your post that's titled "The Green Frog on the Lily Pad." No one is searching for that title. People probably also aren't searching for the title of "Three Dead Mosquitoes" if that's the title of another poem. However, people might be searching for something like poems about insects. And so you could create a post and actually optimize poems about insects and have links to your other posts. I did that with one of my most popular pages, my second most popular page on my website, Metaphors About Writing. I tried to create a general useful web page with lots of metaphors famous authors have used about writing, and then also links to my own blog posts that I've done about writing metaphors. Writing is like kissing. No one's searching for that, yet people read my post every single month because I've linked to it from this page, Metaphors About Writing. The next tip is to post consistently. The way search engines like Google work is they have bots, and they scan websites to see if new content has been added. Now, if you only post once every year, well, you start your website, they notice that you exist. They're going to come back and check after a month, and you haven't posted. Maybe they'll wait 2 months, and then they'll come back and check. Oh, you still haven't posted. So they're just going to say, this website isn't doing very much. We're not going to check it very often, and that means that you're not going to be indexed. So even if you do the most amazing post ever, it's going to take a long time before it shows up on Google because you're not posting consistently. If you post and you decide I'm posting once a week, I'm posting once a month, whatever it is, then you're training Google, oh, new content is being added. We're going to check back and start putting this into our search results. The next thing you can do is participate in basic link building. Now, you don't have to go and do a lot of link building activities, but there's things you might already be doing or that you could easily do that will send links to your website and to your pages and boost your credibility. So basic things you can do. Guest blogging. There are lots of websites or other authors or other platforms where you can do a good guest blog post and get a link back. Turn mentions of you into links. So if people are writing about you online, if your name is appearing anywhere online, have them change your name into a link. For example, I had a short story published in an online humor magazine last year. After my husband read it, he said, "Oh no, Kathy, you did your story wrong." And I said, what did I do wrong? And he said, oh, in your bio, your name isn't a link to your website. So I emailed them and asked, and they changed my name to a link, which just boosts the credibility of my website in Google's eyes. You can also do relevant, non-spammy comments. Have your name linked to your website. Or if there's a very particular reason, you can send a link to a post if it's relevant. So there's some basic link building techniques. The next thing you can do is use Yoast Seo, which is a WordPress plugin, or other plugins. There's plugins on different platforms. This is more particular for WordPress. So for example, with Yoast Seo, I did a post about a writing pillow, and I was basically given a pillow by a company and asked to blog about it. I could do it with an honest review. So my focus keyword that I decided was pillow for writing in bed. And so with Yoast Seo, it will analyze it and say, oh, these are things that's doing good, these are things that's doing bad, these are things that are in between or medium. Now, I don't necessarily change everything. There are times when I would rather choose to make something readable than to make something optimized for Google. I will always choose that. I will always choose my audience's ability to engage with this information. But sometimes it will tell me, oh, it's not quite long enough. I need this to be a little longer. Oh, I only mentioned this once. And there's little things I can do. And it will just let you know how you're optimizing for it. Another tip, and this is advanced if you really want to go the next step, is you can find out more search details. For example, you can find out the competition. You can find out all sorts of things about page rank, the credibility of those you're competing with, tons of data to let you know for different search terms what you should want to do. So this is kwfinder.com is a good website. You have a certain amount of free searches on kwfinder.com. Another is semrush.com. You can see what you're competing with, what the actual search volume is per month of people searching for that. So that's if you want to go the next step. So once you've optimized for Google, then what else can you do? There are some posts actually that you may not want to optimize for Google, that it doesn't, once again, whether it's your poem about frogs or other things that it either doesn't make sense to optimize for Google or you can't, or it's very challenging to do so. Well, for those sorts of posts, you often want to make them shareable. And often your posts that you are optimizing for Google, you can also make those shareable. Where are people sharing things? Well, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's all sorts of places. Facebook, though, is getting the most traffic. So this data is a couple years old, but more recent reports show it's pretty consistent. You can see for social media traffic referrals, Facebook is by far the highest for sending links to different websites. So it's a good thing if you're thinking about, I want to make this shareable on Facebook. That will help you on the other platforms as well. The first tip is use an image. So if I link to my website and I don't use an image, here I am showing up very tiny. If I use an image, look at how much of someone's screen I am taking up. And I can hook them with that image. It's going to make people look at it. They're much more likely to click. So you want to use an image. Where are you going to get these images? Well, if you're not a photographer or a graphic designer, one place you can go is there are people that have created content and say you are free to use them, often as long as you attribute them. And they license it with a Creative Commons license. So you can go and find photographs that people want you to use. There are lots of places you can search for these. Flickr, Comfite, Bing, Google, Wikimedia Commons. There's several layers of Creative Commons licenses on whether you can reuse it, whether you can modify it, whether you can sell something with it, and you just can search by that and find these images that you can use. There are also places like Pexels that have free stock photos, truly free, that you can just use and you don't even have to give credit for. The next tip is create a buzzworthy title. So for example, one of my more popular posts for Facebook that was not a post that I optimized for Google was my 3-year-old took pictures of our beach trip, and they are awesome. I tried to do an engaging, interesting title that's shareable and tells a story and hooks you in. Another one, we cooked an egg on the asphalt, and then I ate it. That is supposed to be a hook in and of itself. And I had close to 800 people read this blog post in a day. So, on the very day it was published. So I can say the blog post title probably worked. Bad titles, and I see these all the time on author websites. What I've been thinking about. A better title might be, Why I No Longer Yell at My Children. A bad title, November Updates. A better title, My New Novel is Coming Out Next Month, and Other November News. Still not a great title, but it's a better title. Bad title, Cool Infomercials. Better title, 26 of the Finest Acting Moments in Infomercial History. And if you want ideas on good titles, the best place to go really is BuzzFeed or these other websites that are pushing out content that people are clicking on. And you can see what makes people click. What do they want? What makes them want to learn more? You don't want to make it gimmicky. You want it to be accurate. You don't want it to be clickbait, but you can still come up with a good title. The next tip is take advantage of the first few sentences. On something like Facebook, you have the first few sentences actually show up right beneath the title. So if you can have engaging first few sentences, it's another layer of the hook that might get people to click through. Tip 4, make your post kairotic or timely. And this goes back to the rhetorical situation that we were talking about earlier. If you can do this and time it right, then you can get a lot of people sharing this at a particular point in time. You can also use buttons and other plugins. If you have these plugins on your website, like or share on Facebook, then people are more likely to click on that and actually do it and just share it without having to open up Facebook and then share it there. And you can install these on WordPress and on a lot of other blogging or website platforms. Next, Pinterest. One of the things that I talked about at the beginning was that you want your content to be savable. If people liked something, you want them to be able to come back to it. One of the big platforms people use for this is Pinterest, and this actually drives a huge amount of my traffic to my website. If we go back to this, once again, a little bit of old data, you can see that Pinterest is driving a lot of traffic, a lot more than things like Twitter. People are much more likely to click through something like Pinterest. And people search on Pinterest to find things, and people can save and go back to it very easily. So for example, this was with my website, I get a whole lot more people from Pinterest than I do on Facebook. And then you can see Twitter, Blogger, Goodreads. I mean, I'm getting people going through from Goodreads, but not many. Google Plus, I didn't know I had anyone from Google Plus, but apparently I do. So, how do you use Pinterest? First, waste a week of your life on Pinterest. If you don't understand a platform, it's really hard to use it. So, go enjoy yourself. This is what Pinterest looks like if you're not familiar with it. You have images, you have information, you have click-throughs, people can like things, heart them, or save them, or share them with people. But you'll notice it's a very visual form. Once again, like Facebook, it's very visual. You can't actually save something very easily to Pinterest unless it has an image. So one thing I recommend is use Canva or another platform to create awesome images. Now, if you know Photoshop and are a Photoshop pro, go ahead and create your own images if you're a designer. For someone like me, Canva, which is a free online platform, is a really nice tool to create professional-looking images with a very minimal amount of time and a very minimal amount of design skills. So that's canva.com. So, for example, this is a slide that I created for another presentation, just using and modifying one of their templates, taking their images and trying to create a good-looking image. Another example, I gave a version of this presentation several years ago, and you can see my opening slide here on the left and one of my tips on the left. And then for this presentation, I've used Canva. Look how much better this looks. And look how much better this looks. Which is better? Canva, obviously. The next tip for Pinterest is create an image that is truly optimized for Pinterest. Now, there was a study done, and they published on Wired of what is the ideal Pinterest image, and this was it. It has no human faces, very little background, multiple colors, lots of red, moderate light and color, and portrait style. Now, of course, my most shared blog post on Pinterest has human faces. It's my writing dialogue one. It has a lot of background. It's black and white. It has no red. And it is landscape style. So it's not doing any of those things, and yet it's still popular. So this is not a hard and fast rule. These are things that often work. You can see somewhat, this is from an author's website, and that she's pinned, and this pin has been going around Pinterest for a while. 18 young adult books to read based on your Hogwarts house. Now this image is perfect for Pinterest. It shows up nice and large. You can read it really easily. It's an engaging image. What you'll see when you go to her website is that it's not the same image that she has put at the top of the page. her Pinterest image is actually at the very bottom of her blog post because she wanted people to be able to pin it, and it's the most pinnable looking image. And yet it doesn't make sense for her to put it at the top of her blog post. So she's created this image just for Pinterest, and it's worked. Lots of people click through. And then it's included later on in her blog post. The next tip is to use good image title names or alternative text. So let's say people are at your website and they're reading the post and they think, that was awesome. I want to save this about writing dialogue. And then they click to pin, if they have a pin it button, or they drag and drop the URL to Pinterest. And your images are titled things like image_5083. Well, that's what's going to fill into the box when they pin it, is image_5083. Or pretty girl walking through a field, when your post is actually about writing dialogue in Pinterest, or writing dialogue exercises. Sorry. So if you can title your image things, then that's what's going to show up. Or you can change this in the alternative text. So here's another post I did, writing powerful emotion beats in fiction. Now this original image that people might choose to pin is automatically filling in writing powerful emotion beats in fiction. If people like the title that you've chosen, they're going to save it that way. And so you've determined how people are going to save it and share it. Now this is an image that was just titled emotion. Not great. So if I go in to edit the image, you can see here there's alternative text. So I don't even have to change the image file if I've already put in. I can just change this image text to writing powerful emotions in fiction. Then when people pin, and they really like that image, so that's what they pin, they click on that image, it comes up with writing powerful emotions in fiction. And it's exactly what I want to say when they pin it on Pinterest. Another tip that is really important is you want to move people from Pinterest to your website. You have these great things on Pinterest. They're like Tolkien's 10 tips for writers, and it has all 10 tips in the image. People have no reason to visit your website at all. Versus St. Martin's croissants. Ooh, I think I want to know how to make this. I'm going to go click on it. 25 mega realistic oil paintings by this Dutch artist. Ooh, there's 24 more. I'm going to click. Holiday Baking 101. I have to click to find out what it is. 100 plus questions to help you interview your character. Once again, sending people to the website. Finally, for Pinterest, there are also advanced techniques you can use. There are plugins, there's Pinterest for Business, there's Pinterest Analytics, there's rich pins, there's all sorts of things you can do if you want to take the extra step. Ultimately, it's all about time. Your time is valuable as an author, and you have to strike that balance of deciding how much time you want to invest in it. However, if you are going to take the time to write a blog post, you should optimize it for something. You might say, this one is mostly a timely post. It's hard to optimize for Google, so I'm going to just try to go the extra step by putting in an image and coming up with a clever title. Making my first few sentences good writing. That's just good writing in general. So that way people are more likely to click through to it. So, or you might decide, this is going to be an evergreen post. I'm going to put a little more time into it. I'm going to research so I can target what people are actually searching for, what it is the readers actually want to read about. Ultimately, you just want to make your website the best that it can be for whoever your audience is. I want to end again with the idea of what is optimization? It is making something the best it can be. And often it's the little tiny things that you can do to make it better. And if I encourage you to work on your author website, to have a platform for your dedicated readers, for your casual readers, for agents and editors to look at. Put something up there, experiment, try it, see what works for you, and slowly develop your brand, develop your platform. And best of luck on working on your own website.